Hello, I'm Captain Sandwich, back with part 2 of my Avatar The Last Airbender countdown. We're going to take a look at the top 5 along with some honorable mentions, so let's not waste any time. On to number 5.
In your note, you said you could teach me to gain control of the Avatar state. How?
You must gain balance within yourself before you can bring balance to the world.
You're probably seeing as this list goes on that I love me some good character development. For this reason, the Guru is a wonderful addition to the series for me because this is an episode essentially dedicated entirely to some of the deepest development that Aang's character received over the course of the show. I love the philosophy in this episode, and I really love that it can actually be applied to real life. Well, 6 out of the 7 chakras can anyway. Not sure how cosmic energy relates to the real world, but the other 6 really do come into play. Love blocked by grief, survival blocked by fear, pleasure blocked by guilt. All of these are real, true emotional problems. Not only that, but the solutions that Guru Patik offers Aang also make a lot of sense. Looking back at the examples I just brought up, the grief of losing a loved one can be transformed into new love for the people around you. Being fearful all the time can make it more difficult to survive, so you need to learn to let your fears go. And when it comes to guilt, you need to learn that, well, shit happens, and you need to forgive yourself and keep your head up. There are a ton of good moral lessons here and some of the most poignant writing in the whole series. I really wish we could have seen more of this Guru, but for what we got, I'd say it was pretty well worth it.
Normally, we would have told you of your identity when you turned 16. But there are troubling signs. Storm clouds are gathering.
I fear that war may be upon us, young Avatar.
We need you, Aang.
Zuko had spoken out against the General's plan. But by doing so in the Fire Lord's war room, it was the Fire Lord whom he had disrespected. Zuko would have to doom his own father.
And here's some more character development for you. I really debated what to do here because I was also thinking about Zuko alone for this slot on the list. They're both very similar episodes, and I was honestly even strongly considering putting them both here as a tie. But after rewatching both, The Storm really is the better episode. Zuko alone might have some of my favorite character development for Zuko in the entire series, but it's pretty hard to top The Storm's ingenious emotional writing. This comes from the episode dealing not only with Zuko's past, but with Aang and the issues he faced which led to him being frozen in the iceberg. The amount of parallels that the writers of the show are able to draw between these two, it's just astounding. When it really comes down to it, these characters that seem like total opposites are way more similar than you would ever think. That is the power of this show. Taking elements that you normally would not put together in your own head and bringing them together in a beautiful way. Specifically, I love this episode because of Zuko's story. Zuko is far and away one of my favorite animated characters of all time, and this is the episode where he went from brooding, angry bad guy to a multi-layered, three-dimensional character with a good heart thrown into these tragic circumstances. This is the episode where he became the Zuko that fans know and love. Just knowing how he got his scar is compelling enough, but this is overall just one of the most three-dimensional, sympathetic episodes in the series. It always gives me chills watching this, especially the Agni Kai scene between Zuko and his father. It's a wonderfully tragic episode with a lot of heart and authenticity. A great showcase of what makes this show so great.
I think it's time I joined your group and taught the Avatar firebending. All I want now is to play my part in ending this war. And I know my destiny is to help you restore balance to the world.
I think you are supposed to be my firebending teacher.
As if you needed any more proof that I love Zuko. This was the episode where Zuko's character arc finally started heading towards a conclusion. With this, he made the transition from villain to hero, and of course that transition is far from easy. I love the fact that the mere appearance of Zuko stirs up all these crazy emotions within the group. The debate halfway through the episode between Aang, Katara, Sokka, and Toph about whether or not to trust him is a big highlight for me. This is yet another conversation that feels like a real human argument with both sides bringing up really good points about whether or not to give Zuko a chance. Really, the entire episode is very human. Everything from the arguments about Zuko to Zuko himself trying to win the group over and constantly failing at it, to the beginning when Aang is in this denial about the brutal defeat at the Day of Black Sun, it's all extremely relatable. I love that even at the end, the group still doesn't like the idea of having Zuko on board, but they feel it's pretty much necessary in order for Aang to learn firebending. It would still take a good 4 episodes for the entire group to accept Zuko not only as an ally, but as a friend. That said, this episode was a huge step forward for this series in terms of story, and a big reminder for me about why I love Zuko so much. Yes, the beginning of the final battle. Well, battles. It's Aang versus Ozai, it's Zuko and Katara versus Azula, and it's everyone else versus everyone else. I know this is technically part 3, but this is where the actual fighting begins, and boy did they know how to kick it off. This is an episode that I can honestly describe as beautiful. The pacing, the visuals, the choreography of the action, and once again, the music. The Awakening might have had one of my favorite music cues in the entire series, but that aside, you'd be hard-pressed to find an episode that surpasses this one in terms of just sheer musical excellence. Then you get to Aang fighting the Fire Lord. This was a big battle for the creators of the show to take on. This is the culmination of the entire series. This is what everything has been building up to. This battle needed to be spectacular. Luckily, the creators knew exactly what they were doing, and this battle is exactly what you would want it to be. It's intense, it's creative, it's well choreographed like I said before, and it's just a spectacle to watch. As is this episode. Into the Inferno established the ending we were all waiting for from day one, and it did it with expert skill. Now before I reveal my number 1 choice, let's talk about some episodes that didn't make the list but still deserve to be mentioned. The Siege of the North, the first big epic battle of the series. Once again, Avatar shows its massive creativity with action sequences that always keep your eye, and an intriguing plot about the spirits of water and the moon. We see Admiral Zhao at his most sinister, and he's willing to go as far as eliminating the friggin' moon in order to conquer the Water Tribe. It's an insane ride which served as an excellent closing point for Season 1. The Library. Overall, this was an intriguing episode, but I bring it up specifically because this is where we first learn about what is referred to as the darkest day in Fire Nation history, aka the solar eclipse. I also bring it up because of the spirit Wan Shi Tong, and the point he brings up that humans only want to learn new things in order to have advantage over an enemy. It presents a nice moral dilemma which would later translate into even bigger dilemmas throughout the series involving violence. The Beach. Sure, I could say I mentioned the beach because it's interesting to see the villains kick back, relax, and act like actual human beings, and that's all well and good. But you all know why this is here. The campfire scene. This is one of the most poignant scenes of the entire show, and I honestly considered putting this episode on the actual list solely for that. Unfortunately, the rest of the episode bogs it down a bit, but it is still extremely memorable. The Firebending Masters. I love the idea that Zuko has to relearn firebending now that he's not relying on rage and anger, and the way they go about it is very clever. I always love a good Indiana Jones-esque adventure, and that's what this episode delivers as well. This episode pulls together a lot of creative and clever elements to leave you with an exhilarating and at times stunning visual experience. The Ember Island Players. I love me a good flashback episode, and Avatars is certainly a fun new twist on it. I actually adore this episode, but I didn't feel right putting it on the list, since all its best elements are borrowed from other episodes. Not saying that is a bad thing, since that is the definition of a flashback episode, but still. And the rest of Sozin's Comet. Some may be surprised I didn't just lump all 4 parts together, and it's because I honestly do consider Part 3 to be just a little bit better. That said, Sozin's Comet was an epic and extravagant way to end the series, and it leaves me with chills every time I watch it. I mentioned the beauty of Part 3, and that certainly applies to Sozin's Comet as a whole. It's just pure awesomeness from beginning to end, just like the series it's representing. Now, here it is, my favorite Avatar The Last Airbender episode of all time.
I expected this kind of treachery from Uncle. But Zuko. Prince Zuko. You're a lot of things, but you're not a traitor. Are you?
Release him immediately.
It's not too late for you, Zuko. You can still redeem yourself.
The kind of redemption she offers is not for you.
Why don't you let him decide, Uncle? I need you, Zuko. I've plotted every move of this day. This glorious day in Fire Nation history. And the only way we win is together. At the end of this day, you will have your honor back. You will have Father's love. You will have everything you want.
Zuko, I am begging you. Look into your heart and see what it is that you truly want.
You are free to choose.
I think if you asked most fans to pick one episode to sum up the entire show, they would pick The Crossroads of Destiny, and rightfully so. This episode is a perfect representation of everything there is to love about Avatar. You got all the drama, all the intensity, all the incredible action, and it never gets dull. Zuko has a number of chances here to do what he knows is right, but he still lets his desire for acceptance overwhelm him and cause him to betray his morals. One of my favorite moments in the series comes when Iroh is captured and he gives Zuko that chilling look. That gets me every time because in just those few seconds you see all the pain and disappointment and betrayal that Iroh was feeling. Overall, this was an incredibly well done episode. It brings together all the elements that make this show what it is, and I believe I can truly call it the greatest Avatar: The Last Airbender episode ever. So that's my list. Leave your own list in the comments if you're so inclined. I'm curious how my list stacks up against other fans of the show. Thanks for sticking with me this whole time. Until next time, this is Captain Sandwich, signing out.